Hey, good morning, everyone. It's David Blackmon here at the Energy Impacts Podcast. With me today is Tom Holm, Executive Director of the Energy Defense Council. Tom is a leading voice at the nexus of energy innovation, national defense, and advanced manned and unmanned vehicles, vessels, and aircraft. As Executive Director of the EDC, Tom connects U.S. Department of War leaders with industry innovators to bolster energy resilience of military bases, ensure energy dominance of U.S. warfighters, and expedite funding for research, product development, and rapid expansion of domestic manufacturing. We're going to have a great show for you today. Tom, how are you?
Very well, David. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're out in the Philippines today, so it is what, after 10 o'clock over there today?
It's still early in the evening here.
Okay. Early enough.
I'm having a good adrenaline rush talking with you and being on the show.
Well, I really appreciate it. This is this topic, especially of the putting the nuclear reactors on military bases here in the Trump administration, second administration, is a fascinating thing to me, and it's something I've written about a few times and want to write about more. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I want to give you, before we go into it, just a few minutes to talk about the Energy Defense Council, what it is you guys do, and your role there.
Okay. Well, Energy Defense Council was stood up about 5 years ago. I put together a kind of a general conference while I was doing some work at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And at that time, we were looking at renewable fuels using algae and some other products. And as I was doing that type of work in the past with General Motors and going all the way back to the Obama administration, which kind of dates me in how long I've been doing this. But I've been involved with renewable fuels and the automotive industry for quite a long time, and always connected with the DoD. I was hired by the DoD on my 16th birthday while I was living and doing some work out at Point Mugu up Navy Base, Ventura County. So I've always had my foot in the door of the DoD. I was born at China Lake Military Base and lived all around the country on military bases, which gave me a background in seeing how things were run on those bases. I was born into it. But doing this conference out at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, we had academia there, we had industry there, we had tribal communities there, but we had Rear Admiral Brad Rosen and Brigadier General Woodworth listening to all of this talk about renewable fuels and so on. And at the time, they were facing an administration that was telling them to run EVs in the battlefield and on military bases. And Admiral Rosen said, Tom, how do we do that? And I said, well, with the background I have working with GM and Ford and others in the auto industry and renewable fuels, I'm telling you right now, sir, you could run a tank from 0 to 60, an electric tank, 0 to 60, in under 5 seconds, 30 a quarter mile, but then you're going to be out of juice in a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
Possible. You can't. We don't have the technology right now to do that. And Admiral Rosen said, Tom, can you focus on the military? Can you come home? Can you come back to the DoD and really just help us, figure this out? And I said, sir, I can do that, but I'm not going to focus on EVs. It's impractical. I can get you as many. I can put together partnerships for the military. We can get as many EV trucks as you want. How are you going to charge them? You don't have charging stations. Sir, how are we going to get the energy to put into the charging stations, to put into those trucks? We don't have the infrastructure. We have to start with moving atoms, moving electrons. How are we going to move electrons from creating them into the vehicles and into the microgrids? And how are we going to create that energy? So let's start from the beginning and work our way towards that. So we stood up the Energy Defense Council strictly to focus on, at the time, DoD, now DoW, and really try to provide energy resilience for military bases and provide energy dominance for American warfighters. And at that time, many of our components, as they still are coming from adversary countries.
Yeah.
So you think about that, there's not really much to think about. Our supply chain is going to get cut off if there's a conflict, with very important components. So EDC, Energy Defense Council, was stood up to really try to address all of those issues and take a common sense approach to moving the ball forward. And this was during a prior administration, just to let you know that. So things were kind of going slowly. There were good ideas out there, but I always say that common sense isn't common. And as I would go to these meetings and listen to things that were getting done, and more importantly, what weren't getting done, I thought we need a big injection of common sense here. We need to take a look at, how we can take a look at what is being done beyond the fence line, beyond the military bases, and bring that back to the bases. We're not too far apart. We just have to take the proper steps. And now that there's a new sheriff in town, things are moving pretty quickly. And in fact, quite quickly. You mentioned before the interview that I'm busy. I've never been more busy in my life. Someone asked me today when I'm planning for retirement. That's never. We're just I'm in that boat. I'll be 6 feet under when I retire.
Well, one of the things I know you're working on right now is this TevCon conference that's going to take place in San Diego in April. Yeah. And that's shaping up to be a really big event. Talk about that for a minute.
What was nice about the first meeting I had with Admiral Rose and Brigadier General Woodworth was that they were top guys. These guys were pretty high up the food chain, and so they put me in touch with other guys, other peers, and guys from Army Futures Command, DevCom out of the Michigan area. We connected with Ruth Ann Darling in the office of the Secretary of Defense and other groups, and I almost immediately started meeting military leaders, commanding officers from the San Diego area, and one of them was a guy named Captain Newt McKissick out of Navy Base Coronado. He was the CO out of Coronado. As I was developing these contacts very rapidly at very high levels, because not only did Brigadier General Woodworth, Admiral Rosen realize that there were shortcomings with regards to energy resilience, so did everyone else. And they needed someone that was nimble, that didn't have to fight a chain of command, that didn't have to fight the bureaucracy. And Captain McKissick once said to me, Tom, your superpower is agility. You can get things done as in a non-governmental role a lot faster than we can, in our bureaucracy, in our chain of command. I said, yes, sir, I can. And so as we went away from that very pleasant first conference on the beach in La Jolla at Scripps, we started focusing on bringing together those top leaders and finding out what they needed, what their challenges were. And, again, going back to common sense, I wanted to stand up a conference for the military, specifically for the military, in which we stated challenges, we stated solutions, and we got money. I mean, how easier could it get than that?
Yeah, exactly.
Common sense, right? And so we the first year at TevCon, which, by the way, initially TevCon stood for the Tactical Electric Vehicle Show. And I told Admiral Rose, that's going to last about 6 months, or that cannot fly. It's just not.
It'll run out of battery.
By the way, he agreed. By the way, he's a smart guy. And he started laughing. He goes, "Yeah, we gotta get past that." So it's the Technology Energy Vehicle Conference, TEVCon. And in military vernacular, vehicle, primarily now means autonomous, unmanned vehicles. And so right from the get-go, 5 years ago, I said, okay, for technology explains itself. We're going to take a look at all the technologies that are out there. For energy, that's probably the top technology we need to be looking at. How do we, as we were standing this up, Captain McKissick was still the commanding officer of Navy Base Coronado, and they were having rolling blackouts on the military base. And this is a mission critical military base. And by the way, there's 9 military bases connected with that command. And I said, we need to address that. And then the vehicle issue is they're all interlinked. If we're going to be taking a look at vehicles, drones, well, how are we powering them in the field? How are we powering the vehicles to get into combat zones, into areas of conflict? How are we powering them on military bases? And so we stood up the TEVCon conference so that we could have military leadership and government leadership come in on day one and state their challenges. We don't have enough power in combat zones. We don't have enough energy in the field for our comm systems, for our weapon systems.
Yeah.
We're having difficulty evacuating wounded soldiers. We don't have enough power for hospitals, in the field. And that, to me, that's just unacceptable. So that, that is what the challenges that were being stated by those involved with operational energy. And then we had others come in. The Air Force Office of Installation Resilience had come in, and he was talking about these, rolling blackouts and problems that they were having. And it took me back to growing up military, being at Navy Base Point Magoo, which is part of Navy Base Ventura County now, where you've got Navy Base Point Magoo, and you've got Navy Base Fort Hueneme. And right in the middle, you've got the Edison power plant. Well, if I was our enemy, that would be my first target. And so, we got to take a look at these kind of challenges. And so the commanding officer of the time of Navy Base Ventura County had brought that up. So now we're taking a look, we're hearing the challenges that they're having with operational energy, installation energy, vehicles. And so we listened to those. And on day 2, we had guys start talking about micronuclear reactors and small modular reactors, SMRs. And I've been researching this stuff for 20 years and just advocating for this for 20 years. Finally, we're being heard. And finally we have companies like, traditional companies like BWXT. They've already been building reactors on nuclear submarines, and
exactly.
I mean, they're already doing it. Right. We already have.
The military's been in the nuclear business for a long time.
We have the technology. We can build it. And so, again, common sense. Well, why don't we take a look at what's been done? And by the way, there have been 0 accident incidences regarding nuclear power in 70 years. And BWXT is a big part of that. And other companies are now, a part of this growth with the microreactors and the SMRs, and it's advancing, very, very quickly. And as a man with a background in science, I want to take a look at the data and the metadata. Is this stuff really safe? And more it was. And I often say that I'm an undercover environmentalist. I do want to protect the environment. I do want to, but we need to do it in a way that is practical, pragmatic for use cases. And if we're looking at this for military bases, well, is it a sin, that we're using a nuclear reactor, that we could be using a nuclear reactor that has 0 carbon emissions? I mean, come on. Who could argue with something like that? And so,
isn't the biggest key is you have to do it with solutions that actually work?
Yes,
right?
sir.
I mean, you can't just put a battery in a tank and expect the tank to go. you have to find a solution that actually works for the application at hand.
And that works 24/7, 365.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And so
You
anyway,
know,
I'm
and
sorry.
it's your show, sir. I feel
No,
like I'm
this is, I want people to hear you.
Well, there are other solutions. I mean, there's still hydrogen, there's still geothermal, there's still, America does have a lot of petroleum. There are a lot of solutions, and we need to be using all of those solutions right now in order to maintain mission readiness, in order to be safe. The world is getting more and more dangerous, and we need to be prepared for everything. And so when we're having rolling blackouts on a mission critical military base like Navy Base Coronado, North Island, Point Loma, Navy Base San Diego, and all of the other bases throughout the country that are having the same problems, we need to solve those solutions. What we found with Energy Defense Council is that we need to maintain our independence from the government. We need to stay a non-governmental, nonprofit organization, and that gives us agility, and it gives us the ability to have speakers come in, knowing that we don't have an agenda aside from, I don't know what kind of language I can use on your show, but we get stuff done. That is the G-rated version of what I live for, is to get stuff
I cuss
done.
every once in a while on this show. Don't worry about it.
Well, one might slip from me here and there.
Yeah.
Let me just say it. We get shit done.
Exactly.
That's what needs to get done right now. We our adversaries have all this momentum. Our adversaries have our supply chain in the palm of their hands. We're getting nuclear, fuel from Russia. I mean, come on,
Rare earth minerals from China, and
it's ridiculous. And so this movement of mission readiness, of keeping the installations mission ready, means putting reactors on those bases. And our commander-in-chief has said in executive orders, we're putting reactors on I'm signing an executive order. We're going to have reactors on military bases, and we're going to cut through the red tape to make that happen. Not only are we going to accelerate funding for the through the government to do that, we're going to cut through the regulations, the red tape. We're going to take a look at different pathways that are non-traditional. And so if you talk to people from DOE right now and other agencies, NRC and others, there's been a pathway in place for regulating nuclear reactors and nuclear power. Well, it's a different pathway with regards to the reactors that are being used on submarines, military submarines, and aircraft carriers. And so which pathway are we going to take? The course of least resistance or the course of most resistance? Let's cut through the BS. Let's just get let's get it done safely. I mean, this is still nuclear power we're talking about, but let's cut the red tape and get this done. And by placing the reactors on federal land, it enables us to move a lot quicker. And so now we're looking at reactors that are pretty expensive. Well, how are we going to pay for that?
That's the first question that comes to mind, right?
Absolutely.
Financing.
I spoke with Admiral Jarrett recently. I was at an event. San Diego has a great group called the San Diego Military Advisory Council, SDMAC. I was at an SDMAC breakfast, and Admiral Jarrett, I caught his eye, and he came just walking up to me with full purpose. Tom, I don't have the money to pay for these reactors. I don't know. I'm not going to subsidize electricity, for surrounding communities. We just don't have the money for that. I go, sir, you're not going to have to. You've got these beautifully, this beautiful combination of putting reactors on bases and data centers. The data centers, the guys operating the data centers are pretty wealthy companies. And those centers are energy voracious. And so they need nuclear power. Where are they going to get that? I think Microsoft spent something like $3 billion in a power purchase agreement to jumpstart the downed reactor at 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
It's already being done. Why don't we model, that example, that precedence? And I know there's some hiccups there, that are taking place, but it's still common sense. All right, that guy, that really rich data company, they need power and they need protection. Why not? And you've got a nuclear reactor on a military base that is surrounded by a fence with guys driving the perimeter with automatic weapons. that property is protected.
Pretty secure, yeah.
And by the way, why don't we do a land lease, which is being done, has been done, for years and years. Why don't we go through NAVFAC, Navy Facilities, and work a land lease agreement that includes a power purchase agreement, or do it separately, however it needs to get done. Let's get that stuff done. And so that model's not being looked at, quite closely, which to me, again, it's not rocket science. It's simply taking a look at the available resources, but taking a look at it with a mind that is not so conditioned to do things the way things have been done. You have military commanders that they've been in the military for 20, 30 years. They're going to they're just conditioned to do things.
Sure.
Things the way they've been done. And
same thing in the energy business. I mean, it's the same way in every business, right? I mean, every phase of society.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, okay. But here's the question. Because we're dealing with the military, and the military has this reputation for bureaucracy and moving slowly, but it also seems to me that because this is being done on military bases, there's this opportunity here to really speed up the process where, in recent decades, it's taken 15 to 20 years to build a new nuclear power plant in America.
Yes, sir.
How much faster can we do it through this process?
Well, there's another executive order that says that this has to be done by 2028.
Yeah.
And so, Project Pele, which has been underway for a number of years, is advancing that project. So BWXT has been working on that. A really brilliant guy, Dr. Chuck Waxman, has been leading that. He's in a place of power now to determine, where the reactors are going to be going beyond that. But you're right, you're spot on correct, that by putting the reactors on federal land, there are fewer regulations to deal with. Yeah. It doesn't mean that we're going to be any less safe. We're going to continue to be safe, but we're going to be moving at a much more rapid rate. But in addition to that, in addition to cutting through the red tape, how are we going to cut through the red tape of getting it funded? And so the current administration is doing that through groups like Defense Innovation Unit. And my dear friend Captain Newt McKissick went from commanding officer of Navy Base Coronado to now working at Defense Innovation Unit. DIU was stood up to accelerate this process. Yeah. And then there's another great group that has been put together recently called the Army Fuse Program, which basically took, multiple agencies and just compressed it into this diamond agency run by Dr. Willis that is getting stuff done very, very quickly. They're able to go out, take a look at these technologies and get them funded much quicker. I've heard things this is insane, but I've heard that things are getting funded in as quick as 90 days. As opposed to go through, GSA and applying to become part, get into the catalog and go that process, which takes years. We're going to continue to get our asses kicked by our adversaries if we move at that glacial rate.
Yeah.
we're gonna just lose every possible edge. And that has been recognized and addressed quite firmly with executive orders that make a lot of sense, that have common sense behind them, and a lot of will to push them forward.
So who would you give credit for in the administration for having that will to
Oh,
push
come
it
on,
forward?
David, you're baiting me on that one. I'll give the administration credit for it. But, I will temper that a bit. I don't know, you might have some pushback on this one. This has been discussed for the last several administrations.
Yeah.
When I was, working, with the Obama administration, we were talking about nuclear power. The difference is that there's a difference between talk and action. It's getting stuff done. And so I will give credit for, our current commander, commander in chief, for getting it done. Things are moving quickly. And, you got to give credit where credit's due. And I think we should be very proud of that. But in addition to, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Well, in addition to it, it's also rebuilt. It's reindustrializing America. When that first question to me was asked by Admiral Rosen, can I help the military get EVs? Yeah, I can. But how are you going to power them? We're talking about putting reactors on military bases. Can we do that? Yeah, we can do it. But we're going to be buying parts from China. We're going to be buying parts from Taiwan. We're going to be getting, fuel from China and Russia. We need to go back to square one. We need to rebuild. We need to reindustrialize America. And that is occurring as well as part of this administration. And so as we're taking a look at budgets, right now our defense budget's about $860 billion. Well, for next year, it's proposed to be $1.5 trillion. That's just, right? But along with that willpower and that push, industry and investors are starting to take a look at that and saying, JP Morgan is the best example of this. JP Morgan stood up a $1.5 trillion fund for defense and infrastructure in America. Well, that gets other people thinking, well, maybe we should be building in America again. There's the will, not only with the government, but with the private sector, with private funding, with VCs, all of that. You said earlier that I'm busy. I am busy. I'm surfing bigger and bigger waves every day, and I want to catch as many as possible while this swell is hitting. And so we're back to TEVCON. So what is TEVCON doing? TEVCON isn't just inviting the traditional military industrial group to come in. There's all these other investors that are out there. I'm sorry, all these other innovators that are out there. Those innovators are coming. Those innovators want to build in America. And so DIU, Army Fuse, Office of the Secretary of Defense, they're all saying, we're going to help you. We're going to help you by finding you factories, by helping you build factories. We're going to help fund that. Non-dilutive funding, coming from the military. And those budgets are being increased, significantly. The red tape for funding is being cut significantly. Getting funded, come on, David, you've been around a while. 90 days?
It's insane. Yeah. I mean, it's always been a period of years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And not just inside the government, but also in the business community to get to a final investment decision on a multi-billion-dollar installation has always taken years.
Yes, sir.
So to do it in 90 days is incredible. It's just, and people need to understand how rare that is.
And to back it up with supporting industry, supporting businesses in America, bringing home manufacturing, innovation, standing up innovation centers. We have a vision right now in San Diego to stand up San Diego as a maritime innovation center. right now, a lot of that work is being done in Austin. And, I'll take a little jab at Austin. Where's the ocean? I can stand in my office and I can see 3 military bases. At any given moment, I can see at least 2 aircraft carriers, and then take a look over Point Loma and know that there's a couple of submarines over there. San Diego is a really prime location on the West Coast to stand up this innovation, because we've got such brilliant minds. We have numerous universities in the area, and there's the military. So 30% of everyone that lives in San Diego is connected with the military. So we're really working to stand that up.
Yeah, Austin makes a lot more sense for Tesla than it does for the Navy.
Yeah, and for the Army and for land based, I mean, I get it. I mean, that's Austin's phenomenal, by the way. I mean, I've spoken to South by Southwest. It is. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, David.
No, I said it's a great city. It's a great technical hub, innovation hub for a lot of different things. But for this specific purpose, San Diego does seem to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and we have. There's also been another shift. 5 years ago, during our first TEVCon, I was speaking with Miss Ruth Ann Darling from the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And I said, Ruth Ann, we're having trouble, keeping the lights on these military bases. And she goes, Tom, I work in operational energy. That's a different different section. That's installations. And I said, ma'am, is anyone thinking that these bases are operational? If there's any kind of conflict in the Pacific, these bases become the front line. And she said, that's a good point. And kind of the conversation was left there. Well, now the Office of the Secretary of Defense is using the term operational installations. And so I'm taking credit for that.
There you go.
Yeah, that was something that, it was something I really kind of had to push back in the day. And so that's opening up some more funding as well, for the bases.
So Pete Hegseth, speaking of the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War, whatever we're calling it now, was a very non-conventional appointee to that job.
Yes, sir.
And has taken a lot of criticism because of that and because of his background at Fox News and all that stuff. But I wonder if his being a non-conventional appointee to that particular position, if you think that has actually been helpful in what you're doing, just in terms of bringing a different mindset to that role than, I mean, he didn't come up through the ranks, had no 4-star general or any of that stuff. He's a different kind of defense secretary. And I wonder if that has maybe kind of been helpful just in terms of pursuing these kinds of innovative solutions that this administration is doing.
When I first met Miss Ruth Ann Darling from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, she said, Tom, all these innovators come to me, with great ideas and even great prototypes. They're actually building things. But I'm speaking, as Miss Darling. Ruth Ann said, don't come to me unless you have a soldier on your team. Only a soldier can understand, what it's like to be in the field. Only a soldier can understand what it's like to try to push a button while you're freezing cold and getting shot at. Yeah. Only a soldier can know that. And so we have a soldier in that position right now. We have a guy, and I can kind of identify with him. I didn't go up through the ranks. I'm not, I never wore the uniform. I feel like I'm serving, but not in that capacity. And so it's a different mindset. And he might not have the polished vernacular of a 3-star, or that kind of experience, but he has other experience. And he has a more open mind, to certain things. And so you're baiting me again, David. And I'll take the bait this time. I think we need all perspectives. Yeah. I think we need to look at things we need to look at things differently. We need to look at things in a fresh mindset. How are these other countries kicking our ass? We're America. How did this happen? let's shake it up a little bit and see what settles. And so, I'm not opposed to what's happened. He's pushing for drone dominance, which, that's the technology right now. That's how wars are getting fought now.
Yeah.
And that's how they're going to get fought in the future. If we're not thinking differently, if we're not thinking with a more clear mind, we're going to continue to get our tails whooped, by unfriendly actors, by our enemies.
So one other question I want to bring up, and we're getting close to the end here, but I don't want to leave without talking about it, is the rare earth minerals and our dependence on foreign actors for our supplies of rare earths and nuclear, uranium and other elements of the nuclear technology. We've seen the Pentagon here over the past year enter into several deals, taking even an equity position in one rare earth miner and refining company there in California. I wonder if you're encouraged by this at the speed with which the administration is moving to reshore and friendshore those supply chains for what is a crucial element of the military complex, really, and all the weapon systems. Those magnets are so key to so many of the weapon systems. Are you encouraged? Do you think we're moving in the right direction in that regard? I know there's still a lot of work to do, but it feels like we've got real momentum moving in the right direction in that area.
I do. I feel like we need to shore up what minerals we need now. And I think there's great movement to look at other minerals, other chemical compositions. Batteries are being made out of, a lot of different things right now. These micronuclear reactors are being fueled by different fuel sources now. Fuel things that we didn't think of, just 10 years ago, and that those innovations are also being advanced and also being funded. So I think we're covering all the bases. I wanted to continue at this pace, and it's going at a great pace. We just the push, the drive, everything is in place now. The manufacturers, it's not just BWXT. There's X Energy. There's Oklo. There are Westinghouse. There are companies that are moving at light speed within the DoD right now. We have to continue at that rate. And it can't be just a short-term push and then we drop the ball again. This has to be sustained. And I think what's happening now, there's, despite whatever your political position is right now, I want this momentum to continue, where we're bringing home American manufacturing. We're bringing home and supporting American innovation, American technology. We're supporting Americans. I tried to buy an aluminum box for this battery pack that we were working with one of our partners. We couldn't buy it in America. An aluminum box. My father, my grandfather, all of my uncles all worked at U.S. Steel. We made something in America before, and so we need to continue the momentum to onshore manufacturing, minerals, mineral processing, nuclear, small modular reactors, technology, and manufacturing. And that is happening. We just have to keep this momentum going.
Well, Tom, I can't thank you enough for joining me. This is fascinating. We need to do this again, maybe after the conference.
Yes,
do
sir.
Kind of a recap.
Maybe during the conference. We want to have you come out
love to do it during conference. If you think you'll have time, I would love to do a live feed with you.
I would love for that to happen.
Fantastic. Let's work on that.
Yes, sir.
Where can people find you? Are you on LinkedIn or?
They can find out about the TEVCON conference, which is where everyone is really going to be convening. And that's simply tevcon.com, TEVCOM.com. Tom Holm, feel free to reach out to me, Tom Holm at energydefense.org. I'm available. I try to respond as quickly as I can, and I try to make myself as accessible as possible.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be a real challenge these days at the pace things are moving. I feel really encouraged about all this after talking with you, and really happy we were able to pull this off, even though you're halfway around the world. We're going to let you go now and get a little sleep.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to go to viewer questions, and I apologize for that. I just got so caught up in the conversation, but we'll do better next time we talk to Tom, and wish you all a happy Wednesday. I forgot what day it was. At my age, that's not an uncommon thing. And we will see you next time on Energy Editions.